Hi everyone! In today's video I'm going to read a long extract from my forthcoming book, Means and Ends, The Revolutionary Practice of Anarchism in Europe and the United States. It will be released on July 25th this year, and you can pre-order now either from AK Press directly or an online bookstore of your choosing. If you'd like to buy a digital copy of the book, AK Press do sell EPUBs on their website, but only once the book is released. Today, the extract I'm going to be reading is from Chapter 3 of my book and explains anarchism's value system and how they define freedom, equality, and solidarity. I hope you enjoy. Anarchism's central ethical value is that individuals should lead free lives. Although anarchists focused on the freedom of the individual, they did not conceptualize this freedom in terms of an isolated, abstract entity who stands outside of society. For anarchists, an individual can, given the kind of animal that humans are, only be free if they belong to a community of equals, bonded together through relations of solidarity. As the black anarchist Lucy Parsons put it, emancipation will inaugurate liberty, equality, fraternity. Anarchists viewed the values of freedom, equality, and solidarity as interdependent, such that they cannot be understood in isolation from one another. The realization of any one of these values can only be achieved through the realization of all three at once. Anarchists conceptualized freedom in two main ways: not being subject to domination, or having the real possibility to do and ought to be. Although anarchist authors consistently valued both of these things, they did not all label them as freedom. Charlotte Wilson, for example, defined freedom as non-domination, while at the same time arguing that having the real possibility to do and ought to be is important for human development and flourishing. Freedom as non-domination holds that individuals are free if and only if they are not subordinate to someone who wields the power to impose their will on them. If a person is subject to the arbitrary power of another, then, even if it is not currently being exercised, they are being dominated. To be free is to be able to live in accordance with one's own will, rather than being subject to the will of another. In 1869, Bakunin claimed that freedom consists in the full independence of the will of the individual with respect to the will of others. In the same text, he defines freedom as independence with respect to all laws that other human wills, collective and isolated from the collectivity, impose. During his subsequent 1871 lectures to Swiss members of the International, he said that the negative condition of freedom is that no person owe obedience to another. The individual is free only if his will and his own convictions, and not those of others, determine his acts. In 1870, Bakunin explicitly connected this idea with non-domination when he advocated self-determination and the fullest human freedom in every direction, without the least interference from any sort of domination. The same position was expressed by other anarchist authors. Wilson referred to the impulse in men to dominate their fellows, i.e., impose their will upon them and assert their own superiority. She advocated the abolition of domination in favor of freedom, such that every person had an equal claim to direct his life from within by the light of his own consciousness, rather than be subordinate to the will of any other individual or collection of individuals. Galini similarly defined the broadest individual autonomy in terms of absolute independence from any domination by either a majority or a minority. According to the real possibilities view of freedom, an individual becomes more free as what they can do and or be increases, that is, the activities they can perform and the states they can experience. The possible beings and doings available to a person, and so the extent to which they are free, are a product of A, the external conditions within their social and natural environment, and B, their internal abilities, which enable them to take advantage of external conditions. In order to have the real possibility to read The Very Hungry Caterpillar, a child must, among many other requirements, know how to read, internal ability, live in a society where the very hungry caterpillar is produced, and possess a copy of the book External Conditions. As they grow older, they become better at reading, development of internal ability, and acquire a greater number of books, expansion of external conditions. This marks an increase in their freedom, since their range of possible beings and doings has increased. They can now become an expert on the history of the potato or read the Poetic Edda. An individual's freedom is restricted when obstacles decrease the number of real possibilities open to them. A slave owner who prevents their slaves from reading further limits what possibilities they have and thereby makes them even less free. Such obstacles do not have to be directly established by the threat or exercise of violence. The cultural norm that homosexuality is unnatural and immoral can by itself limit a person's opportunity to be gay due to them internalizing these ideas and fearing the judgment of others. Crucially though, obstacles can be removed or overcome. For instance, slaves can rise up and kill their slave masters, or gay people can gain the confidence to be themselves and not care what homophobes think. This emphasis on having the actual means to lead a specific kind of life can be seen in Malatesta's claim in 1884 that true freedom is not the right, but the opportunity, the strength to do what one will, and in his observation decades later that freedom is a hollow word unless it is wedded to ability, which is to say, to the means whereby one can freely carry on his own activity. Yet people's real possibility to do and or to be can be restricted through domination by others. Malatesta also wrote that freedom presupposes that everybody has the means to live and to act without being subjected to the wishes of others. As a result, he advocated the complete destruction of the domination and exploitation of man by man. Malatesta was not the only anarchist to define freedom as a person's real possibility to do and or to be. In 1927, Alexander Berkman distinguished between negative liberty, which is freedom from something, and positive liberty, which is the opportunity to do, to act. 2 years later, he wrote that freedom really means opportunity to satisfy your needs and wants. If your freedom does not give you that opportunity, then it does you no good. Real freedom means opportunity and well-being. If it does not mean that, it means nothing. His comrade, Emma Goldman, similarly wrote in 1914 that true freedom is not a negative thing of being free from something. Real freedom, true liberty, is positive. It is freedom to something. It is the liberty to be, to do. In short, the liberty of actual and active opportunity. All anarchists thought that one of the main reasons why freedom is valuable is that it is a prerequisite for full human development, in the sense of people improving their internal abilities in multiple directions and, in so doing, truly realizing their potential. Rudolf Rocker claimed that freedom is not an abstract philosophic concept, but the vital concrete possibility for every human being to bring to full development all the powers, capacities, and talents with which nature has endowed him. Goldman argued that authority stultifies human development while full freedom assures it. Elsewhere she declared that only in freedom can man grow to his full stature. Only in freedom will he learn to think and move, and give the very best in him. Only in freedom will he realize the true force of the social bonds which knit men together, and which are the true foundations of a normal social life. The same position was articulated by anarchists who defined freedom in terms of non-domination. Wilson thought that the creed of anarchism is the cultus of liberty, not for itself, but for what it renders possible. Authority, as exercised by men over their fellows, it holds accursed, depraving those who rule and those who submit, and blocking the path of human progress. Liberty indeed is not all, but it is the foundation of all that is good and noble. It is essential to that many-sided advance of man's nature, expanding in numberless and ever-conflicting directions. Although anarchist authors use different definitions of freedom, They agreed that not being dominated, having the real possibility to do and or to be a broad range of things, and developing oneself as a human were all valuable. This is because they feed off one another. In order to develop one's internal abilities in multiple directions, a person must have the real possibility to do so, and in order to have this real possibility, they must, among other things, not be subject to domination that deprives them of these real possibilities. Anarchists held that the freedom of the individual, however defined, is only possible in and through society. Humans are, by nature, social animals, and so cannot achieve freedom outside of a social context. To quote Bakunin, man completely realizes his individual freedom, as well as his personality, only through the individuals that surround him, and thanks to the labor and collective power of society. Society, far from decreasing his freedom, on the contrary, creates the individual freedom of all human beings. Society is the root, the tree, and liberty is its fruit. Furthermore, being free for man means being acknowledged, considered, and treated as such by another man, and by all the men around him. Liberty is therefore a feature not of isolation, but of interaction, not of exclusion, but rather of connection. For anarchists, in order for a society to be free over an extended period of time, it must be structured so that it both enables the freedom of the people who comprise it and prevents individuals from being able to oppress others. The social structures and relations that ensure the ongoing freedom of individuals are necessarily egalitarian ones. Anarchists thought that freedom and equality are so interconnected that it is in practice impossible to have one without the other. Bakunin wrote, "I am a convinced supporter of economic and social equality because I know that, outside that equality, freedom will never be anything but lies." Peter Kropotkin echoed this sentiment. To have the individual free, they must strive to constitute a society of equals. It is apparent that anarchists advocated equality, but it is not yet clear what exactly they meant by the term. My interpretation is that anarchists conceptualized equality as the equality of freedom, or, as Malatesta phrased it, the equal freedom for all. This is the idea that society should be structured such that there is, as far as is possible, equality of self-determination and equality of opportunity. Equality of self-determination was connected with non-domination, while equality of opportunity was connected to human development and the real possibility to do and ought to be. Equality of self-determination was conceptualized as having two components. First, each individual is equally free to live in accordance with their own will, unless they subject another person to their will through coercion, because doing so would establish a relation of domination and thereby violate the equal freedom of all. As Berkman put it, "You are to be entirely free, and everybody else is to enjoy equal liberty, which means that no one has the right to compel or force another, for coercion of any kind is interference with your liberty." Malatesta similarly argued that anarchists advocate freedom for all and in everything, with no limit other than the equal freedom of others, which does not mean that we embrace and wish to respect the freedom to exploit, oppress, command, which is oppression and not freedom. Second, organizations are structured in a horizontal rather than hierarchical manner, such that there are no divisions between rulers who make decisions and subordinates who do as instructed and lack decision-making power. In horizontal organizations, each member has an equal say in collective decisions, and so co-determines the organization with every other member. According to Malatesta, this kind of equality emerges from the fact that individuals within a group have three choices. Either they submit to the will of others, be enslaved, or subject others to his will, be an authority, or live with others in fraternal agreement in the interests of the greatest good of all, be an associate. Anarchists chose to be associates. These two components of equality of self-determination can be seen in Bakunin's remark that domination must be prevented by not giving anyone the opportunity, which should be achieved by the actual organisation of the social environment, so constituted that while leaving each man to enjoy the utmost possible liberty, it gives no one the power to set himself above others or to dominate them, except through the natural influence of his own intellectual or moral qualities, which must never be allowed either to convert itself into a right or to be backed by any kind of political institution. Equality of opportunity, or what Bakunin termed equality at the outset, was understood by anarchists to refer to a situation in which each individual had equal access to the external conditions necessary for the real possibility to do and or to be, such as food, healthcare, and education. According to Malatesta, anarchists call liberty the possibility of doing something, and in order for this to be realized, society must be constituted for the purpose of supplying everybody with the means for achieving the maximum well-being, the maximum possible moral and spiritual development. In the opinion of Berkman, far from leveling, such equality opens the door for the greatest possible variety of activity and development. It would, in other words, result in an expansion of human development. Anarchists held that freedom and equality are generally maintained over time by solidarity between individuals and groups. By solidarity, anarchists meant two different kinds of social relation. The first consisted in individuals cooperating with one another in pursuit of a common goal. This is the concrete means through which the external conditions necessary for people to exercise capacities and satisfy drives are established, such as the organization of a school where children can develop and transform themselves, or the coordination of an economy that provides the materials a school needs. As Kropotkin noted, a free society could not live even for a few months if the constant and daily cooperation of all did not uphold it. According to Malatesta, liberty, in the sense of one's real possibility to do and or to be, becomes greater as the agreement among men and the support they give each other grows. The second kind of solidarity anarchists advocated was individuals forming reciprocal caring relationships, in which each individual acts to ensure the ongoing freedom and equality of those around them. Malatesta praised solidarity in the sense of affection, love, friendship, and all that which draws people closer together in brotherhood. For him, solidarity, that is, harmony of interests and sentiments, the sharing of each in the good of all, and of all in the good of each, is the state in which alone man can be true to his own nature. It causes the liberty of each to find not its limits, but its complement, the necessary condition of its continual existence in the liberty of all. In short, anarchists understood that, in order to be free, an individual needs positive social relationships, such as loving parents, a supportive teacher, and good friends. For anarchists, such reciprocal caring relationships could only genuinely occur between equals who horizontally associate with one another. As Elise Reclus wrote, between him who commands and him who obeys, there is no possibility of friendship, since above is either pitying condescension or haughty contempt, below either envious admiration or hidden hate. I hope you enjoyed listening to this extract from my forthcoming book, Means and Ends, The Revolutionary Practice of Anarchism in Europe and the United States, which you can pre-order now from AK Press or an online bookstore of your choosing. It releases on July 25th, and I can't wait for everyone to be able to finally read the whole thing. If you like my videos, please support me on Patreon so I can keep doing things like this and writing books about the history of socialism. Thanks so much to everyone who has and continues to support me on Patreon. Have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye.